From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
Welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. You can see and sometimes smell it in the air, evidence that another bad western wildfire season is in full swing. Most of the smoke choking southwestern Idaho is blowing in from major fires burning in Northern California. Wildfire managers have been saying for years that our fire seasons are getting longer and more destructive. 2021 is no exception. This year, wildfires have destroyed several thousand buildings and homes, and several people have died, including 15 wildland firefighters. A spokesperson for the BLM and the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise says the firefighters died of causes including medical incidents such as heart attacks, vehicle accidents, and other causes. And in terms of acres burned, just look at the numbers. According to the National Interagency Fire Center, NIFC, so far this year, more than 45,000 wildfires have burned just under 6 million acres. 67 large fires are still burning in 12 states and have consumed 3.1 million acres. Also, of the total number of fires, nearly 40,000 were human-caused. Here in Idaho, 21 large fires are still burning. They range in size from 146 acres to one that's just about 80,000 acres. Overall, wildfires here have charred more than 252,000 acres to date. The 10-year average between 2011 and 2020 was 641,000 acres burned. So up to this point, 2021 has been a below average year for Idaho. Of course, we understand that's a hard thing to hear if your home or community has been impacted. The numbers I just laid out have grown since President Biden visited Boise 2 weeks ago to shine a spotlight on the growing threat of western wildfires and to call for urgent action on climate change. Biden talked about wildfire prevention with Idaho officials, got a briefing on the wildfire situation, met with smoke jumpers, and toured NIFC, which coordinates the nation's response to fires. He pointed to the worsening fire seasons in Idaho and across the West as the consequence of a warming planet, and that extreme weather changes will get worse, not better, without action. Right now, about 16,000 personnel are assigned to fighting fires. While here, the president praised them and promised them support.
There's an expression I say to all the firefighters here, that God made man, then he made a few firefighters. You all are the most incredible people. Now, it's not hyperbole. The only thing that really matters is if there's enough firefighters. Firefighters protecting firefighters. That's the big deal. That's what it all comes down to. And I just want you to know that you have the full support of my government, my administration.
In August, the Biden administration boosted pay for many federal firefighters to at least $15 an hour. At that time, Biden said his administration would provide bonuses to firefighters to bump up their pay this year while working with Congress to try to increase the wages permanently. Nearly 15,000 firefighters who work for the U.S. Forest Service and Interior Department got those raises. And as we focus today on the fight against worsening wildfires, we'll talk about the significance of the president's visit, our longer and more destructive fire seasons, and what can be done about it, and the importance of our firefighters. My guest today is Bureau of Land Management Assistant Director for Fire and Aviation, Grant Bibi. He is also a former Great Basin smoke jumper here in Boise. And he's also the man who led the president on the tour and briefed him while the president was visiting NIFC. So, Grant, good morning.
Morning, Doug. Thanks.
Hey, we'll get to the serious stuff in a second, but I have to ask, what was that whole experience like?
Well, it was a little bit like a wildfire. I think anybody who knows anything about fire know that we're really good at responding to incidents and in a heartbeat setting up a mini city. And I'll just say that having the White House descend on you with about 4 days notice is a bit like responding to a fire. I'll say it was an amazing experience. We all came out with an incredible impression of the competence of White House and Secret Service staff to pull off these kinds of events. But NIFC's been here for 50 years. It is a feather in the cap of Boise and Idaho that the National Center for Interagency Cooperation in Fire, I mean, really the model for how we do fire, is located here in Boise and in Idaho. And so, we just feel humbled that, after 50 years, we've kind of finally got a sitting president to come here to the fire center and acknowledge the importance of wildland fire to the nation. It was a great event for us, and we're really cognizant of the legacy of NIFC and all the people who've come before us, the men and women who've made this place great. So it was an honor to be the fire director who got to welcome a president here. It's not that the White House doesn't always pay attention to fires, but really the first time a the chief executive has been here. So that was an amazing thing.
So to take advantage of that opportunity, what points did you really want to get across to the president?
Well, I'll just say that the take home is something you referenced in the beginning here, and that is that firefighters are the key to all this, right? At all levels, the local cooperators, the county folks, the state folks, the federal folks. And with the kind of wildfire situation we're seeing year after year now in the West, we need a different model really for how we're responding to fires. We need to do a lot more fuels management, and we need to take care of our people better, give them a more stable environment. I'll say when I started out as a firefighter, I was a seasonal firefighter working my way through college. And that was kind of a model based on the fire seasons we used to have in the West. We got different fire seasons now, so we need a different model for staffing up. So we're looking at longer fire seasons. We need longer duration and better pay for our firefighters. What you referenced before, the $15 minimum wage, I mean, we know that post-COVID, every business in the world is really chasing scarce employees in the United States. We got to pay better if we want people to keep doing this really difficult job. And we're making great demands on people, so we need to, at the very least, pay them what they're worth.
And what were the key things in your opinion that he expressed to you and his interest in this issue?
Well, let me say first, I think the reason they came here is because the White House has been paying attention to everything that's been going on in the Western wildfire season all summer long. And they've been at the other end of the briefings that we've been providing and paying close attention. They were on their way to the Caldor fire, and they stopped in here to pay homage to the fire community. And we're kind of symbolic of that. So, I tried a couple times to thank the president for coming and to tell him that it was an honor to have a chief executive here at the Fire Center. And he stopped me both times and said, you know what, this isn't about me. This is about me expressing what the nation owes to the nation's firefighters. So it was really clear that it was about firefighters, and that's why he was here. So I'll say the take-home measure for us was really more fuels management, more active management in light of global warming, more commitment to our firefighting resources, and he really stressed that with us, that he's doing everything he can to take care of firefighters. That's his chief goal. You saw that in the opening comments from him about God creating man and then firefighters. I think he really is honoring the commitment of these people at every level of the nation's response to wildfire, that we really need to take care of those folks and commit to them, because this problem, the nation's wildfire problem, isn't going away anytime soon.
So are you anticipating any feedback from the administration? Are there ongoing discussions in the wake of the visit?
There are, and there are ongoing discussions and ongoing legislative fix. I call them fixes. I use an air quote there because really there is no fix to wildfires. Fires are part of the Western reality. But commitment to firefighters, raising basic pay, having something like a wildland firefighter series, so that at least federal firefighters are called what they are, which is a firefighter. And that seems like a logical thing to have happen, but we don't have that in the federal system right now. So we're looking for a series, really a job classification that describes people's duties better. Better ability to move back and forth between agencies is something we stressed with the president. Higher pay just for incoming folks, right? Because we're paying less than $15 an hour, less than $13 an hour sometimes for incoming firefighters, and it's really hard for us to attract folks when they can make well more than that in way more comfortable jobs that are way more challenging. We want to get away from seasonal employees. That's what we've done. We always need seasonal employees, but we want a more permanent workforce, because we got these fire seasons that are stretching 6, 8, 10 months. And then we're committing to international aid as well. And so once you throw all that in there, it's just having somebody around for 3 or 4 months. While it's great to get folks in the door, it's not a viable mode to really organize our entire federal response. We need something better. We need something more significant. So we know the administration is committed to it. We know many in Congress are committed to it. And it's good to see that really, it's like both sides of the aisle, every level of government knows that we've got to do something different, especially in the West with wildfires.
Are you going to completely eliminate seasonal fire workers, or maybe shrink that pool and expand the full-time?
Yeah, not at all. And so as a former, I was a longtime seasonal employee, and there's incredible value to allowing folks to say go to school and then come here and work for the summer, and that's a critical part of really getting folks in the door. But it used to be that we have a third and third of the third. We have a third permanent, we have a third kind of career seasonal, we call them, and then we have a third temporary seasonal. So we just want to strengthen the commitment to those folks so that they get benefits earlier in their career. So frankly, you can go to a fast food chain and get benefits way sooner than you can in the federal government as wildland firefighters. So we want to do that piece. But there's still going to be seasonal workers. It's still a great way to get into the government and get into the federal fire response. But we want way more commitment on the other end to permanent employment. And really, we need folks to be working well into the winter so that they can do all the fuels management work that we know that we need to do when smoke isn't in the air.
So, with the pay situation being what it has been, what, in your opinion, makes these men and women want to do this as a job, as a profession?
I'll say love the mission. It's one of those jobs where you, at the end of the day, you hopefully have accomplished something meaningful, and you can look back and say, look at that, I stopped the fire on that right flank of that fire, or I did a fuels project, and today we burned off 1,000 acres, and look at what I've done. So I think a commitment to something greater than oneself, a public service mission that really everybody benefits from. I mean, we are one of those ultimate white hat kind of organizations. It's like nobody has a problem when firefighters show up to help protect communities or infrastructure. So I think that attracts many people, and I think we've counted on that, or people who want an adventurous lifestyle or want to live and sleep in the dirt. But honestly, that has great allure, but people then need to lead their lives, and so people are going to work for us for 20 years fighting fire, which we hope, because honestly, firefighters who've been around for 20 years are the core of what we need. We need skilled firefighters to take care of themselves, to take care of their peers, to protect communities. It's all about the skilled folks that we can retain. That's what makes firefighting a great organization. That's how we keep people alive. So if we want people to commit to us, we need to commit to them. So really, it's great to have seasonal firefighters come in, but soon in their careers, we want to say, if you stick with us, we're going to give you benefits. It's like, that doesn't seem crazy, but sometimes in our system, it's taken a long time to get people where they get retirement benefits or where they get good health care. So we want to hit that sooner. We want to shift that workforce and actually just commit to folks earlier, because frankly, we want them to commit to us.
And Grant, if you would, in a nutshell, just for those who may not know exactly what the National Interagency Fire Center does, can you explain it in a short way?
I can, absolutely. And I'll tell you, when the president showed up, he made a point of walking around the room and greeting everybody. There were only a few of us who actually had kind of speaking parts, because it was a quick tour. But so Interagency Fire Center, BLM just happens to host it. The Fish and Wildlife Service and the Forest Service, and we started the Fire Center back in the late 60s, right around 1970 is when it really got the doors opened. It is where all the partners in fire management come together and agree on common standards for how we're going to manage fire. So if you think about it, if you got a fire in Wyoming, you got a fire in California, you got a fire in Alabama, you want all the engines to have the same sort of hose fittings. You want everybody to train to the same standards. So an incident commander in one spot can be an incident commander in another spot. So all the people who fight fire in this country agree on a set of standards, and this is a place where we set those standards, agree on them. And then in the summertime, when smoke's in the air and we're trying to move crews around or move aircraft around, we have folks here who organize that kind of activity. They come from all walks of federal and state government, and they agree upon where we're going to send resources, because really the take-home message is that for fires, no one piece of ground, no one land manager has enough resources to manage fire when things are really extreme, right? So we all count on the help of our friends. This is a place where all the managers of all those friendly agencies get together and decide on common principles, common standards, common training requirements, and then agree on where we're going to send our stuff. We all pool our resources. We send them where they need to go. We don't care about whose ground it is. We just say, there's smoke in the air. We need to fight fire. So this is really the embodiment of that principle that all partners, all lands, we've all got a problem that only through sharing our resources can we solve. And so this is where it happens.
Grant, we're going to take a quick break right now. And when we come back in 2 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit more about the worsening wildfire seasons here. And welcome back to Viewpoint. Today we're focusing on the fight against worsening wildfires. My guest is BLM Assistant Director for Fire and Aviation, Grant Bibi. Grant, I've heard that the fire seasons are anywhere from 30 to 70 days longer than they were decades ago. Why is that?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, we've got a big backlog of fuels management that we need to handle. I think back in the National Fire Plan, which kicked off in 2001, the nation really started committing to fuels management. I think there's a lot farther to go. So we've got fuels that we need to deal with to give ourselves a fighting chance of managing fires when they do occur. I mean, I think if you look at global climate change and what's happened in the West, I mean, the last study I was looking at was looking at the length of summer, and from 1952 to 2011, if I've got this right, summer in the Northern Hemisphere has stretched from 78 days to now 95 days in length. So if you think about our fire season being keyed on the Northern Hemisphere summer, that's telling, right? So that has big explanation for why we're really seeing some of the fire seasons we've seen. Winter is shrinking, right? So winter is now shrunk from 76 down to 73 days. When we look out into the future, we look at the end of the century, and we're always talking about our kids and our grandkids and the world they're going to live in the Northern Hemisphere. They're saying the summer is going to be 166 days long in the Northern Hemisphere. So this, in a nutshell, is what we're facing with. We've got fuels buildup that we need to manage, but we've got really long summers that are getting longer and longer. And so when we talk about needing a professional workforce that can commit to the long term, we need folks who are going to be able to respond to fires in that time. So the West is experiencing drought. We know that we've had extreme drought this year across all the West, especially in the timber country. Fuels are really dry. We have less snow than we used to have. And so we're getting precip, but the precip we're getting is more in the form of rain, and it's running off faster. So fuels dry out faster. I think this year is really a good case in point, where we knew that all the heavy fuels across the West in forested lands, which was really a big concern this year, were going to be extremely dry. So the kind of fire season we see this year, 6 million acres burned, as you noted, that's not necessarily a record in terms of acres burned, but those acres that burned this year have been predominantly in forested landscapes, and those are tougher landscapes to fight fire in. They take longer commitment of resources. That just makes for an extreme fire season. We've got a couple fires that have been really notable this year, like the Dixie Fire in Northern California, that by itself burned over 1 million acres, a record, and I think it's 1.2 million right now. It's just getting to the point where they're going to contain it. It's been burning for a long time, and that's not even the biggest fire we've had over the last couple of years. So it's been extreme. California has been setting records. Colorado set records last year, if you'll remember. They both set their state record for biggest fire, and then they reset it in the same fire season. In California, the Dixie Fire and the Caldor Fire, which were two notable ones, both burned over the Sierra Crest, which is if you've been to Northern California, a big granite expanse of very light fuels, and no problem, those fires burned right over the top of that. In Colorado last year, same thing. We had fires burn over the top of the Continental Divide through really rough granitic terrain, the kind of terrain that usually is a natural barrier to fire. So we've got fuels that are so dry, fires are just spotting well ahead of themselves and across all the natural barriers.
Grant, you mentioned the fuel load a couple of times, and during the president's visit, the governor mentioned that 1/3 of forests are at risk of catastrophic fires. Is this, partly a result of the former policy of basically putting out every fire as soon as it started, rather than having that let the fire do what it does and thin out things and improve the landscape?
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of it, and I think a lot of folks will point to that policy. We called it the 10 a.m. policy, and it really came out of the 1910 fires in northern Idaho, around Wallace, Idaho. Some of those huge fires that really convinced the Forest Service that fire was the enemy and it needed to be stomped out by 10 a.m. the next day, anytime you had a fire start, right? And I wasn't around back then, but I'm sure that sometimes the Forest Service failed to control fires at 10 a.m. the next day. But certainly folks wanted to stomp out every fire. Even low intensity fires that in forested landscapes can do some good in certain forested landscapes. So I think that's true in some landscapes. I think in other places, fires are meant to burn across large chunks of ground. Lodgepole pine is a great example when you think about the Stanley Basin and the kind of lodgepole you see up there. Those fires typically in that kind of environment burn big swaths of ground at large return intervals every 200 to 400 years. So it's not unusual for that kind of environment not to burn in low intensity fire, but to burn in high intensity stand replacing fires. So it kind of depends on where you are. I think in rangelands, where we manage a lot of grounds, we have different questions, right? We've got invasive grasses that are growing where they didn't before. We have cheatgrass really spreading across the West. So we have kind of a different problem. And so for us, it's not so much about too little fire in the landscape traditionally it's really about too much fire. So it kind of depends on the piece of ground you're talking about. Certainly it's tough now in the environment in the West that we're talking about now, where people are living all sorts of places they didn't live. It's tough for an agency like the Forest Service, for instance, to really do a lot of managed fire where they say, well, this fire is doing good, we're going to let it burn, because there's so many folks who are affected by fires. It's a tough, thorny issue. You would, if nobody were living in the West, you wanted to just let fires go, you could do more of that. But I think everybody's mindful of the downstream effects of letting fires burn. So I think when managers like the Forest Service do something less than full suppression these days, it's really because maybe they don't have all the resources or they got safety concerns. I mean, there are places I'm sure they would like to do more managed fire, but they really can't because of the effects of smoke on communities or the possible effects of a fire if it grows more than people think it's going to. So it's a tough issue. Certainly.
And it's obviously going to be an issue that goes on forever. It's going to have to be a continuing thing.
Doug, I was going to say that it's like we don't have a fire problem. So we've got fires on the landscape in the West because this is an adapted environment. We're always going to have fires on the landscape. So we don't fix the problem. We try to get it to a place where fires are more manageable, have less impact on people. But we're always going to have fire response organizations. We always have to put out fires. If we had all the fuels treated across all the jurisdictions in the West, we would still need firefighters out there to actually contain the fires where we want them contained. They would just be dealing with fires that are more manageable, and that's what we're after. So a fire hits a thinned timber stand or a fuel break, and that's where firefighters can come in and catch the fire. It's not like we're going to treat fuels and then just say, all right, we're done. We don't need firefighters anymore. We always need a robust fire response workforce. It's just we want to give them a fighting chance of catching fires where we want to catch them.
And Grant, I only have about 30 seconds or so left, but one final thing. I mentioned earlier that you were a smoke jumper and part of a small crew that parachutes in to fight the most remote fires. Is the job as exciting and scary as it sounds?
Yes, although I did point out to the president that the reason I became a smoke jumper was because I was a teacher before that, and jumping out of a plane like that was less scary than facing teenagers in a classroom. But yeah, super exciting working with a small committed group, and I'll say that's the fire mission, is working with small committed people who love what they do and are returning to service to the nation, and people are committed to that, and that's the beautiful part about doing this job.
Well, Grant, thank you so much to you and all the firefighters and those behind the scenes who are protecting people, property, and natural resources from wildland fires. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Have a good day. Well, still ahead, if you're looking for an escape from the everyday hustle and bustle, you may want to hustle on over to a peaceful place in Boise that just got a major upgrade. We'll take you there after the break. Well, if you're looking for a place to get away from it all, you might want to check out the new and improved Catherine Albertson Park in Boise. A 2-year improvement project on the park finished up this week. Mayor Lauren McLean helped cut the ribbon during the rededication. This construction on it was done in partnership with Boise Parks and Recreation and the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Family Foundation. Replacing almost all of the turf with natural meadow grass was one of the biggest improvements. This will provide more natural habitat for the wildlife in the 41-acre sanctuary. And if you're new to the area, Catherine Albertson Park is located just off the Boise River Greenbelt in the heart of the city. A beautiful place to check out. Well, that is all of our time for this week's Viewpoint. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you tomorrow on Wake Up Idaho, and then right back here next Sunday morning for another Viewpoint.